Motion in your step.
Motivation in your heart.
Hello, and welcome to today's Motion and Motivation podcast.
We've put together a study guide for everyone. If you need it, you can grab it from the video description. All right, so we're diving in. You've given us a really interesting set of materials today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to be looking at excerpts from Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
But get this, your copy is a Hindi translation.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Don't worry, though. We'll make sure all the insights come through loud and clear, no matter the language.
Right.
We're going to try to unpack, Covey's core principles for effectiveness and how those principles can help us build stronger relationships.
Sounds good.
I'm excited to get started.
Me too. I think it's fascinating how his ideas just resonate across cultures.
Yeah.
Even in translation, these principles are like powerful stuff.
For sure, for sure. And speaking of powerful stuff, Covey talks a lot about paradigms.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those words that can seem a bit academic, but it's actually pretty simple and super important.
Right. It's a simple concept, but it has big implications.
Yeah.
A paradigm is basically just the lens through which you see the world.
Yeah.
So it's your set of assumptions, your beliefs, and values that shape how you interpret things.
So it's not just about, the facts. It's about how we understand them.
Exactly.
I read a story once about a man who went to the doctor thinking he had, a heart problem.
Oh, wow.
But it turned out all he needed was a new pair of glasses.
What?
Yeah, his blurry vision was making him anxious, and that was affecting his heart rate.
Interesting.
His whole paradigm shifted when he could see clearly again.
That's a perfect example.
Right.
Yeah. And just like bad eyesight can distort our physical view, outdated paradigms can really distort our view of the world and hold us back.
So then how do we even know if we're operating with outdated paradigms?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's not always easy to spot,
Right.
especially when these beliefs are so deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
Covey compares a paradigm shift to the moment when Einstein's theory of relativity, replaced Newton's laws of physics.
Mm.
For centuries, Newton's model, worked well enough,
Right.
but it was incomplete. Einstein's theory just gave us a more accurate and complete picture of the universe.
Yeah, I love that comparison.
Yeah.
It reminds me of how the discovery of bacteria totally revolutionized healthcare.
Oh, for sure.
Before that, people didn't even know those tiny organisms existed,
Right.
let alone that they were the cause of so many diseases.
Exactly. Think about the implications of that shift. It led to huge changes in hygiene, sanitation, and medical treatments.
Wow.
Imagine the possibilities when we shift our paradigms in other areas of our lives.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do paradigms actually show up in, our everyday lives? How do they affect how effective we are?
Well, consider this, if your paradigm is that success is all about external things, like money or status or possessions, then all your actions will be focused on chasing those things.
Right.
But Covey suggests that true effectiveness, it really begins with character,
Okay.
with a strong inner foundation based on principles.
Yeah, and that's where his distinction between the personality ethic and the character ethic comes in.
Oh, yeah.
This is the part that really resonated with me.
That's a core concept in his work.
Yeah.
The personality ethic is just focused on techniques, appearances, and quick fixes. It's about looking successful rather than being successful.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone, right?
Exactly.
It might look better on the surface, but it doesn't address the real problem.
Precisely. Whereas the character ethic
Yeah.
is all about building a foundation based on timeless principles.
Okay.
Like integrity, honesty, fairness, courage.
Right.
It's about who you are at your core.
And it's funny, Covey tells this story about his own son struggling in school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it really highlights this difference in approaches.
I'd love to hear about that.
So his son was having a tough time academically and socially. And Covey initially tried all these popular psychology techniques to help him, but nothing seemed to work.
Oh, wow.
It was really frustrating for him. And that experience actually forced Covey to question the prevailing paradigms of child development and look for deeper solutions.
So he was essentially operating from a personality ethic,
Right.
trying to fix the problem with external techniques.
Exactly.
But he realized the issue was deeper than that.
He needed to shift his paradigm and focus on building his son's character, not just his outward behavior.
Right.
It's about going beyond those surface-level solutions and addressing the root cause.
And this is where Covey's emphasis on proactivity comes into play.
Yes.
It's about taking responsibility for your own life and choices.
Instead of being reactive and letting external circumstances dictate your life,
Exactly.
it's about focusing on what you can control.
Right.
I remember reading about Viktor Frankl, a psychologist who survived the Holocaust, and he said that even in the concentration camps, where people had everything taken from them, they still had the freedom to choose their attitude.
That's a powerful example.
Yeah, it highlights that even in the most challenging circumstances, we always have the power to choose our response.
Right.
And that leads perfectly into Covey's example of the child choosing to play tennis.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It sounds so simple.
Yeah.
But it illustrates this idea of proactivity so beautifully.
Remind me about that example. I know it's one that often sticks with people.
Okay, so Covey talks about the power of language and choice.
Okay.
Instead of the child saying, I have to practice tennis,
Right.
they reframe it as, I choose to play tennis.
Interesting.
It's a small shift in language, but a huge shift in mindset.
Yeah, it's about reclaiming your power and owning your choices.
Yeah.
You're no longer a victim of circumstance,
Right.
but an active agent in your own life.
And I wonder, how can you apply this choose to thinking in your own life? What are some areas where you feel stuck in that have to mindset? That's such a good question to reflect on.
Yeah.
You know, this whole idea of taking ownership reminds me of Covey's distinction between leadership and management. It's a crucial distinction that often gets overlooked.
I agree.
Covey says that leadership is about defining the right path, the what of our endeavors.
Right.
Management, on the other hand, is about effectively navigating that path.
Well.
The how?
All right.
It's like this, imagine you're on a jungle expedition.
All right.
Leadership is about deciding which direction to go, which path to take through the jungle.
Okay.
Management is about making sure you have the right supplies, skills, and strategies to effectively navigate that chosen path.
That's a great analogy.
It reminds me of Covey's example of producers cutting a path through the wrong jungle while managers are busy focusing on efficiency.
Oh, interesting.
It highlights why both leadership and management are essential for success.
Yeah, without leadership, you might be incredibly efficient at doing the wrong things, going the wrong direction.
Right, exactly.
And without management, even the best vision can get bogged down and lost in the details.
Exactly. So you need a leader to set the vision and a manager to make sure that vision gets executed effectively.
I agree.
And speaking of effectiveness in relationships, that brings us to Covey's metaphor of the emotional bank account.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's one of the concepts from the 7 Habits that I think people talk about the most.
It's such a powerful metaphor for
Yeah.
understanding how trust and positive interactions build strong relationships.
Yeah, it's like making deposits of kindness, understanding, keeping commitments.
Right.
Those deposits build up a reserve of trust that allows you to draw on it during times of conflict or misunderstanding.
And like a financial bank account, if you consistently overdraw by breaking promises, being disrespectful, or not making an effort to understand the other person,
Yeah,
the relationship suffers.
Yeah.
It's like being hit with overdraft fees all the time.
totally.
No one wants that.
That reminds me of the story Covey shares about the father who connected with his son by building a miniature Great Wall of China.
I haven't heard that one. Tell me more.
Okay, so the father was struggling to connect with his son, who was going through a rebellious phase. Instead of trying to control him, the father decided to invest in their relationship.
Okay.
And he remembered his son had this fascination with the Great Wall of China.
Yeah.
And suggested they build a miniature replica together.
Wow.
It took time and effort, but through that shared experience, they built a bridge of understanding and strengthened their bond.
What a beautiful example.
I can just imagine them working side by side, talking, laughing, and maybe even getting a little frustrated with the project at times, but ultimately they're building something together.
Right.
And that's what matters.
That shows that investing in relationships, it takes time and effort,
Yeah.
but the payoff is immeasurable.
And that brings us to another one of Covey's key principles.
Synergy. Synergy.
Yeah.
It's about the magic that happens when people work together and achieve something greater than they ever could alone.
Right. It's the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly.
It's like when you add baking soda to vinegar,
Okay.
it creates this amazing volcanic eruption on their own. They're just simple ingredients, but together they create something entirely new and exciting.
I love that analogy. And synergy isn't just about collaboration.
Right.
It's also about valuing differences and recognizing that everyone has something unique to contribute.
That reminds me of a funny fable Covey tells about an eagle, a squirrel, a rabbit, and a fish being forced to develop skills outside their natural talents.
What?
Imagine that school.
I have to hear this one.
Okay, so picture this animal school where the curriculum requires all the animals to climb trees, swim, run, and fly. Of course, the eagle excels at flying, the squirrel at climbing, the rabbit at running, and the fish at swimming.
Yeah.
But because they're forced to be well-rounded and learn all the skills,
Right.
they end up being mediocre at everything.
No.
The eagle's a terrible climber. The fish nearly drowns trying to run.
Oh my gosh.
You get the picture.
That's a hilarious image.
It is. It's funny, but it makes a serious point.
Right.
It shows how rigid systems and expectations can actually stifle potential.
Yeah.
Instead of valuing each individual's strengths, we end up with a system where everyone is mediocre.
Yeah, just like those animals struggling to do things they're not naturally good at.
Right, and it makes you wonder how often we try to fit, square pegs into round holes in our own lives instead of embracing and leveraging our differences.
That's a great point to reflect on.
And it leads perfectly into the final habit we'll discuss in this part of our deep dive, Habit 7, Sharpen the Saw.
Yeah.
The habit of renewal and self-improvement.
Right.
It's like taking the time to sharpen your tools so you can be more effective in all areas of your life.
Exactly. Covey breaks down this renewal into 4 dimensions: physical, social, emotional, mental, and spiritual.
Oh.
We'll delve deeper into each of these dimensions in the next part of our deep dive.
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
But for now, I want you to consider this. Think about a time when you felt burned out or exhausted.
Oh.
What were you neglecting? Was it your physical health, your relationships, your mental stimulation, or your sense of purpose? We'll explore how to sharpen the saw in each of these areas next time.
Feels good.
See you then.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Last time we were talking about sharpening the saw, that crucial habit of renewal.
Right.
It's all about staying sharp in 4 key areas. Physical, social, emotional, mental, and spiritual.
Yeah. It's like having a well-rounded toolkit for life.
Right.
If you neglect any of these dimensions, it's like trying to build a house with only a hammer.
Oh, okay.
Sure, you might get something built, but it won't be pretty, and it certainly won't be as strong as it could be.
Perfect analogy. So let's talk about the social emotional dimension.
Okay.
How do we sharpen the saw in this area?
Think back to Covey's metaphor of the emotional bank account. This dimension is about making those deposits of kindness, empathy, and understanding.
Right.
It's about nurturing your relationships and investing in the well-being of others.
Sometimes I catch myself thinking, oh, I'll just send a quick text later, or I'll call them back when things calm down. But then life gets in the way, and it's like I'm letting those small deposits slip through the cracks.
I understand, we've all been there.
Yeah.
But remember, it's often the small, consistent actions that make the biggest difference.
Okay.
Think about it like this. A single rainstorm might not seem like much, but over time, those consistent showers can nourish an entire forest.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's not about grand gestures. It's about the everyday moments of connection.
Exactly. And those moments aren't limited to our closest relationships.
Right.
Think about your interactions with colleagues, acquaintances, even strangers you encounter throughout your day. Every interaction is an opportunity to make a deposit or withdrawal.
I was at the grocery store the other day, and the cashier was having, a rough time.
Oh, no.
She was clearly stressed and overwhelmed.
Ah.
So instead of just rushing through the checkout, I took a moment to ask her how her day was going.
Oh, that's nice.
And she seemed genuinely touched by that simple gesture.
That's great.
It was like a little deposit of kindness, not just for her, but for me too.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Those small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect. When you make someone feel seen and appreciated, it not only brightens their day, but also creates a more positive atmosphere for everyone around them.
It reminds me of something my grandmother used to say. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a gentle reminder that kindness and empathy are powerful tools, not only for building strong relationships, but also for navigating the world more effectively.
For sure, for sure. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the mental dimension.
Okay.
How do we sharpen the saw mentally?
This dimension is all about staying curious and expanding your mind. It's about feeding your intellect and challenging your assumptions.
Right.
It's about reading, learning new things, and engaging in conversations that make you think differently.
For me, it's reading.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I get lost in books. It's like traveling to different worlds without ever leaving my couch.
That's awesome.
I always have a stack of books on my nightstand, and I try to learn something new every day.
That's fantastic. And it doesn't always have to be about formal learning.
Right.
It can be as simple as watching a documentary, listening to a podcast, or having a thought-provoking conversation with a friend.
Or even just taking a different route to work and noticing new things you've never seen before.
Exactly. It's about staying curious, keeping your mind engaged, and being open to different perspectives.
Yeah.
The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It is.
It keeps you humble and open to growth.
So true. And that brings us to the final dimension of renewal, the spiritual dimension. This one can feel a little more personal and maybe even a bit intimidating for some people.
You're right. It can be a very personal and nuanced dimension.
Right.
And it's important to remember that spirituality doesn't necessarily have to be tied to religion.
Right.
It's really about connecting with your core values, your sense of purpose, and what gives your life meaning.
For some people, that might be through prayer or meditation. For others, it might be spending time in nature, listening to music, or volunteering in their community.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
It's about finding what nourishes your soul and helps you connect with something bigger than yourself.
It's like that quote by Maya Angelou.
Oh, yeah.
I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
That's a beautiful quote.
Right.
And it highlights that connecting with that deeper sense of purpose allows you to show up in the world with more authenticity and compassion.
Absolutely. And I think all four of these dimensions, physical, social, emotional, mental, and spiritual, are interconnected.
I agree.
When you invest in one area, it positively impacts the others.
It's a beautiful synergy.
Yeah.
When you're physically healthy, you have more energy and focus to engage in meaningful relationships, pursue intellectual growth, and connect with your spiritual side.
Right.
And when you're feeling emotionally balanced and supported, you're more likely to prioritize your physical and mental health.
It's like a virtuous cycle that keeps feeding itself.
Exactly.
And I think this whole idea of renewal is especially important in today's fast-paced, always-on world.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and neglect our own well-being.
You're right. It's more important than ever to prioritize self-care and renewal.
Yeah.
It's not selfish. It's essential for being our best selves and showing up fully in the world.
Speaking of showing up fully, let's transition to the next habit. Habit 4, think win-win. It's all about approaching interactions with a collaborative mindset, seeking solutions that benefit everyone involved.
It's a paradigm shift from the more common win-lose mentality where people see interactions as a zero-sum game.
It's like that old saying, you can't get ahead by pulling others down.
Exactly. And Covey outlines 4 less effective paradigms that people often operate from.
Okay.
Win, lose, lose, win, lose, lose, or just plain win.
So let's break those down.
Okay.
Win-lose is the classic competitive mindset. It's like a tug of war where one person has to win and the other has to lose.
It's often found in hierarchical structures where people are constantly vying for power and position.
Okay, then there's lose-win.
Right.
This is like the doormat mentality, where you constantly prioritize other people's needs and wants over your own, often to avoid conflict or please others.
This can lead to resentment and a feeling of being taken advantage of over time.
Right.
It's not a sustainable approach to relationships.
And then lose-lose is like the ultimate no-win situation.
Yeah, it's like 2 people trapped in a sinking boat, both refusing to bail water because they're too busy trying to pull the other one under.
That's a scary thought.
It is. This is a destructive paradigm that often stems from anger, resentment, or a desire for revenge.
And then there's just plain win.
Right.
It's like focusing on your own success without necessarily trying to make others lose, but also not really caring about their outcome either.
This can work in situations where there's no interdependence.
Okay.
But in most relationships, you need a more collaborative approach.
Right. And that's where the win-win paradigm comes in.
Exactly.
It's about finding solutions that benefit everyone involved.
Right.
It's about cooperation, not competition.
Think of it like a puzzle.
Okay.
Instead of trying to force your pieces into the puzzle,
Yeah.
it's about working together to find where each piece fits best to create a complete and beautiful picture.
That's a great visual. And it reminds me of a time when I was working on a project with a team.
Oh, yeah.
We had very different ideas about how to approach the task. At first, we were all trying to push our own agendas.
Right.
But then we realized that by combining our strengths and perspectives, we could create something much better than any of us could have imagined on our own.
It sounds like you shifted from a win-lose mentality to a win-win approach.
Exactly. And the result was amazing. We not only created a successful project, but we also strengthened our relationships as a team.
That's the beauty of a win-win mindset.
Yeah.
It creates a more positive and collaborative environment where everyone feels valued and respected.
For sure.
And it leads to more innovative and sustainable solutions.
Now, I know that adopting a win-win mentality isn't always easy.
Right.
It requires a certain level of maturity, integrity, and a belief that there's enough for everyone to succeed.
You're right. Covey highlights these 3 character traits as essential for a win-win paradigm.
Yeah.
Integrity is about aligning your actions with your values, being honest and trustworthy.
And maturity is about expressing your ideas and feelings with courage and consideration, while also seeking to understand other people's perspectives.
Right. It's about finding that balance between courage and consideration.
And abundance mentality is that belief that there's enough for everyone to succeed.
Yeah.
It's about seeing opportunities rather than threats.
Okay.
And it's about believing that the pie can actually get bigger when we work together.
It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly. And these character traits are the foundation for creating win-win agreements, which clearly define expectations, goals, and rewards for everyone involved.
So it's about moving away from vague job descriptions and one-sided performance reviews,
Right.
and creating a framework for shared understanding and accountability.
Win-win agreements empower individuals to take ownership of their work and contribute their best efforts, knowing that their success is tied to the success of the team.
I love how this all ties back to the idea of synergy.
Yeah.
By fostering a win-win environment, you create the conditions for true collaboration and innovation.
And that leads us to habit 5.
Yeah.
Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
It's about truly listening to and understanding the other person's perspective before trying to make them understand yours.
It's such a simple concept,
Right.
but it's often so hard to do in practice.
It is.
We're so quick to jump in with our own opinions and solutions without taking the time to really listen and understand the other person's point of view.
It's like we're all carrying around these invisible megaphones, ready to blast our own thoughts and feelings without pausing to hear what the other person is saying.
That's a great image.
Yeah.
And Covey talks about this tendency to listen autobiographically,
Right.
where we filter everything through our own experiences, biases, and assumptions.
It's like we're listening with the intent to reply, not to understand.
You know, I'm definitely guilty of this.
Oh, yeah?
I find myself formulating my response in my head while the other person is still talking.
Oh, wow.
It's like I'm already planning my next move in the conversation before I've even fully heard their point.
We all do it. It's human nature.
Yeah.
But Covey challenges us to practice empathic listening,
Okay.
where we put aside our own agenda and
Wow.
truly try to see the world through the other person's eyes.
It's about stepping out of our own heads and into their shoes.
Right.
It's about understanding their feelings and motivations, even if we don't agree with them.
Covey uses the analogy of a mirror to illustrate the difference between these 2 types of listening.
Okay.
When we listen autobiographically, we're holding up a mirror to ourselves, reflecting back our own thoughts and feelings.
Right.
But when we listen empathically, we're holding up a mirror to the other person,
Okay.
reflecting back their thoughts and feelings, allowing them to see themselves more clearly.
I love that analogy. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think when people feel truly heard and understood, it creates a safe space for open and honest communication.
Exactly. It builds trust and rapport, paving the way for finding common ground and creating win-win solutions.
And once you've genuinely made an effort to understand the other person's perspective, then you can seek to be understood.
Right.
But even then, it's important to communicate clearly and respectfully.
Covey suggests using I statements to express your feelings and needs, rather than you statements, which can come across as accusatory.
Oh.
For example, instead of saying, "you're always late," you could say, "I feel frustrated when you're late because it makes me feel like my time isn't respected."
It's about taking ownership of your own feelings and needs rather than blaming the other person.
Right.
And it's about being mindful of your tone and body language.
Remember, communication is about more than just words.
Right.
It's about the energy you bring to the interaction.
It's about being authentic, being respectful, and being open to finding solutions that work for everyone.
And that leads us to the final habit we'll discuss for this part of our deep dive. Habit 6, Synergize.
Okay.
We've already touched on the concept of synergy earlier,
Yeah.
but it's so important that it deserves its own habit.
Synergy is that magical thing that happens when people work together and create something greater than the sum of their parts.
Right.
It's about valuing differences and seeing them as opportunities for innovation and creativity.
Covey uses the analogy of a musical group to illustrate this point.
Okay.
Imagine a jazz band, with each musician bringing their unique talents and style to the group.
Mm-hmm.
When they play together in harmony, they create something much more complex and beautiful than any one musician could achieve alone.
It's like the difference between a solo piano piece and a full orchestral symphony.
Exactly. And just like in a musical group, synergy requires respect, open-mindedness, and a willingness to listen to and learn from others.
It's about recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute, even if their perspective is different from your own.
Covey tells this great story about a team of people working on a project.
Okay.
One person was very creative and innovative,
Uh-huh.
but not very organized.
Okay.
Another person was very organized and detail-oriented, but not very creative.
Sounds like a classic case of different strengths and weaknesses.
It is.
How did they leverage their differences to create synergy?
At first, they clashed.
Oh, no.
Each person thought their way was the best way,
Right.
but then they started to listen to each other,
Okay.
to appreciate the value of each other's strengths.
Ah.
They realized that the creative person's ideas could be brought to life with the help of the organized person's planning and execution skills.
So, by working together, they were able to achieve something that neither of them could have achieved on their own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the power of synergy.
It really is.
It's about 1 + 1 = 3 or even more.
But synergy doesn't just happen magically.
Right.
It requires a conscious effort to create a culture of respect, open-mindedness, and collaboration.
Covey suggests several strategies for promoting synergy, such as brainstorming, valuing differences, and seeking third alternatives.
Okay, let's break those down.
All right, brainstorming is a great way to generate new ideas and solutions.
Okay.
It's about creating a safe space where people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts, no matter how out there they might seem.
And valuing differences is about recognizing that every individual brings a unique perspective to the table. It's about encouraging people to express those perspectives, even if they differ from the norm.
And seeking third alternatives is about going beyond compromise.
Okay.
Instead of settling for a solution that only partially satisfies everyone,
Right.
it's about brainstorming until you find a solution that everyone feels great about.
So this might take more time and effort, but the results are worth it.
They are. When you find that third alternative, it's like striking gold.
Synergy is the ultimate expression of interdependent effectiveness.
Right.
It's about creating a win-win situation for everyone involved.
And you know, it's interesting how these habits all build upon each other.
Yeah.
They're not just isolated principles.
Right.
They work together to create a framework for personal and interpersonal effectiveness.
We've covered 6 of the 7 habits now.
We have.
And I'm starting to see how they all fit together like pieces of a puzzle.
You too.
And they all lead up to that final habit, sharpen the saw, which we explored at the beginning of this part of our deep dive.
It's the habit that keeps all the other habits sharp and effective.
Exactly. But before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay.
Think back to those 4 paradigms of human interaction. Win-win, win-lose, lose-win, and lose-lose.
Okay.
Which paradigm do you see playing out most often in your own life?
Hmm.
And how might that be impacting your relationships and your ability to achieve your goals?
That's a good question.
Yeah, we'll dive into the final habit and explore its implications for effectiveness next time. Welcome back to our deep dive into Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. We've covered a lot of ground, exploring those powerful principles for personal and interpersonal effectiveness. From shifting our paradigms to seeking win-win solutions and mastering the art of empathic listening, it's been quite a journey.
It really has.
And now we arrive at the final habit, the one that keeps all the other habits sharp and effective. Habit 7, sharpen the saw. I love this habit because it's all about renewal, about taking care of yourself so you can show up as the best version of yourself in all areas of life.
Yeah.
It's about investing in your physical, social, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being.
You know, think of it like this.
Okay.
You wouldn't try to run a marathon without proper training and conditioning, right?
Right.
And you wouldn't expect a car to run smoothly without regular maintenance.
Yeah.
Well, the same goes for you. You need to take care of yourself, recharge your batteries, and sharpen your skills to be truly effective.
I love that analogy. It makes so much sense. We often put so much pressure on ourselves to constantly produce, to be on all the time, that we forget to take care of the most important asset we have ourselves.
Yeah, it's like trying to run a race with a sprained ankle.
Ouch.
You might be able to hobble along for a while, but you're not going to perform your best, and you're definitely going to risk further injury.
So how do we actually sharpen the saw in each of these 4 dimensions? We've already touched on some of them in previous parts of our deep dive, but let's go a little deeper.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start with the physical dimension. This one is all about taking care of your body through exercise, nutrition, and getting enough rest. It's about fueling your body with healthy foods, moving your body in ways that feel good, and giving yourself permission to rest and recharge.
I used to think exercise was all about burning calories and losing weight,
Yeah,
but I've come to realize it's so much more than that.
right.
It's about feeling energized, strong, and confident in my own skin.
Exactly. It's about feeling good in your body, not punishing yourself for what you ate or how you look,
Yeah.
and it's about finding activities that you enjoy and that fit into your lifestyle. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Even small, consistent actions can make a big difference.
It's like the saying, the best exercise is the one you'll actually do.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of rest. Getting enough sleep is crucial for physical and mental well-being. It allows your body and mind to repair and recharge so you can wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day.
Speaking of feeling refreshed and ready, let's talk about the social emotional dimension. We touched on this in part 2 of our deep dive when we discussed the emotional bank account, but it's worth revisiting.
Absolutely. This dimension is all about nurturing your relationships, building connections, and investing in the well-being of others. It's about being present and engaged in your interactions, showing empathy and understanding, and taking the time to connect on a deeper level.
I think it's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and forget to prioritize our relationships. We get so focused on checking things off our to-do list that we forget to check in with the people who matter most.
It's a common trap. But remember, relationships are like plants.
Okay.
They need to be nurtured and cared for to thrive.
Yeah.
And just like a plant needs sunlight and water, relationships need attention, affection, and quality time.
And I think it's also important to have a variety of relationships in your life.
Yeah,
Close friends, family, colleagues, mentors, even acquaintances you bump into at the coffee shop. They all contribute to your overall sense of belonging and connection.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Each relationship brings its own unique flavor and richness to your life.
Yeah.
And remember, quality over quantity is key.
Right.
It's better to have a few close, meaningful relationships than a bunch of superficial ones.
That's a good point. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the mental dimension of Sharpen the Saw. This is one that really resonates with me because I'm a lifelong learner. I love reading, exploring new ideas, and expanding my knowledge.
Me too. It's like a mental workout for your brain.
Yeah.
And just like physical exercise strengthens your body, mental exercise strengthens your mind, making you more alert, more adaptable, and more resilient to stress.
And it doesn't have to be about formal education or studying complicated theories. It can be as simple as reading a good book, watching a documentary, learning a new skill, or even just having a stimulating conversation with someone who challenges your thinking.
Exactly. It's about keeping your mind engaged, staying curious, and being open to new perspectives. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It is.
It keeps you humble and keeps you growing.
I love that. And it brings us to the final dimension of Sharpen the Saw, the spiritual dimension. This one can be a bit more personal and nuanced, as we talked about earlier.
You're right. It's a very personal and individual aspect of renewal. For some people, it might involve connecting with a higher power through religion or spirituality. For others, it might involve spending time in nature, practicing meditation, or engaging in activities that bring a sense of peace, purpose, and connection to something bigger than themselves.
I think it's about finding that sense of awe and wonder, whatever that means for you. It's about connecting with your core values, reflecting on your life's purpose, and nurturing that inner spark that makes you feel truly alive.
It's about finding that source of inspiration and strength that sustains you through challenges and helps you navigate life's ups and downs with more grace and resilience.
I think all 4 of these dimensions of Sharpen the Saw, physical, social, emotional, mental, and spiritual, are interconnected. When you invest in one area, it positively impacts the others.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful synergy.
Yeah.
When you take care of your physical health, you have more energy and focus to engage in meaningful relationships, pursue intellectual growth, and connect with your spiritual side. And when you feel emotionally balanced and supported, you're more likely to prioritize your physical and mental health.
It's a virtuous cycle. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. Sharpen the Saw is about creating a life of balance, wholeness, and continuous growth. It's about taking care of yourself so you can show up as your best self in all areas of your life.
And it's a reminder that true effectiveness is not just about what you do, but about who you are and who you're becoming. It's a journey, not a destination.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive into Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. We've explored powerful principles that can transform your life and your relationships if you put them into practice.
And remember, it's never too late to start. No matter where you are on your journey, you can always choose to adopt these habits and begin creating a life of greater effectiveness, fulfillment, and joy.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the 7 habits of highly effective people. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought. Think about one specific area of your life where you'd like to be more effective. It could be your work, your relationships, your personal growth, your health, anything. Now choose one of Covey's 7 habits and consider how applying that habit could create positive change in that area. It might be a small step, but every journey begins with a simple step. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss any of our updates. Also, if you think this video could help others, please share it with them. Thanks for watching and for your support.